Standing before the sprawling landscape, Sophia's voice rings out with unwavering resolve as she officially declares that she has finally made her monumental decision. A young boy with dark hair solemnly admits to Sophia that he does not know how many grueling years will inevitably pass between them. Despite the vast uncertainty of their future, the boy confidently promises that when he finally grows up, he will return exclusively for her. Gazing deeply into her eyes, he urgently pleads with her to wait patiently for his promised return. His voice echoes with emotional weight as he insists that she must wait until the day he can fulfill his sacred vow. The heavy, oppressive atmosphere of the room is suddenly pierced by a sharp, aggressive sound of an unexpected arrival. A harsh, domineering woman aggressively questions why someone as lowly as Sophia should ever have the distinct honor of greeting the king of the neighboring country. Looming menacingly over the cowering girl, the cruel woman harshly reminds Sophia that her very existence in this world is only thanks to the king's boundless mercy, as Sophia desperately begs her to stop. The woman's face twists into a vicious sneer as she coldly states that if not for the king's grace, Sophia would have already been executed long ago. Sophia cries out in absolute terror, desperately asking the woman she calls mother what she is doing as a glowing hot poker is thrust violently toward her exposed skin. A horrifying scream tears from Sophia's throat as the blistering iron sears deep into her flesh, leaving a gruesome, smoking burn on her forearm. Tears stream uncontrollably down Sophia's face as she begs for mercy, crying out that it hurts terribly and her skin is agonizingly burning. Displaying no shred of empathy, the sadistic woman merely smiles and mocks Sophia's pain, sadistically asking if it already hurts when they haven't even officially started yet. The cruel tormentor dismissively assures the sobbing girl not to worry because those minor wounds will heal quickly, before callously calling Sophia absolutely disgusting as she cowers on the floor. The woman commands strict obedience, announcing that the king of the neighboring country will attend the coronation greeting today, and forcefully orders Sophia to not display any improper behavior. She cruelly reminds the injured girl that she is a princess even if only in title, demanding she behave accordingly while noting that the servants will eventually bring her a proper dress. The woman glares down with terrifying authority, emphasizing that she firmly believes Sophia completely understands the dire stakes of this monumental situation. Delivering a final, lethal ultimatum, the woman warns that if Sophia dares to appear before the king, her head will be brutally cut off immediately without hesitation. Clutching her freshly seared, bandage-wrapped arm in quiet agony, Sophia meekly whispers her submissive agreement to the horrific terms. Slumped defeatedly on the cold stone floor, Sophia internally vows to never allow herself to be noticed by the king, tragically acknowledging her cursed identity as the child who received the prophecy of being the king's slayer. The narrative violently shifts backward in time, plunging into a dramatic flashback from exactly 18 years ago. Noah, the current ruling king and Sophia's biological father, bursts frantically into the royal chambers, desperately demanding to know if his beloved baby was born safely. The grim-faced servants reluctantly inform His Majesty that the child is a princess, dodging his frantic questions about whether it was a boy or a girl and how the queen is faring. Falling to his knees in utter devastation, the heartbroken king weeps uncontrollably as he realizes his dear wife has passed away, denying the cruel reality unfolding before him. A solemn advisor steps forward, gravely warning the mourning king that the newborn princess will be a severe test of his fate, revealing the dark truth that she was born bearing the cursed mark of the king's slayer. The stern advisor bows deeply, respectfully addressing the shattered mourning ruler as His Majesty. He then coldly begs the king to quickly make his final, impossible decision regarding the cursed newborn's life. Despite the ominous prophecy hanging over her head, the king couldn't bring himself to kill the daughter of his late queen, which led to Sophia spending her entire life locked away in an abandoned tower. Snapping back to the present, Sophia, now beautifully dressed in regal attire, timidly tries to speak up but is swiftly interrupted. A royal servant formally announces that it is finally time for Her Highness, Princess Sophia, to proceed to the gathering. Closing her eyes with a mixture of profound dread and quiet resignation, Sophia softly confirms she is ready to face her destiny. Sophia reflects that the palace, purely for the sake of its reputation since it officially acknowledged her existence as a princess, would occasionally allow her to leave the tower under incredibly strict conditions, just like today. Escorted by heavily armed guards, Sophia laments her fate, wishing she didn't have the cursed mark, but quickly realizes that thinking about it is entirely pointless. Staring straight ahead as she walks the grand halls, she firmly concludes that there is absolutely no use dwelling on her miserable, unchangeable circumstances. Her elegant, dark high heel steps purposefully onto the polished floor as she braces herself for the chaotic royal event. Determined to make the most of her rare freedom, Sophia silently vows that she must enjoy this moment, or else she will be the one who truly loses in the end. Sophia's eyes widen in absolute wonder, her face lighting up with a radiant blush as she whispers how amazing everything looks. Wandering through the lavish banquet, she marvels at the incredible sights, noting that there are things she has never seen in her life before, including so many foreign guests. Suddenly, her attention is completely captivated by a strange, dark object sitting silently on the grand banquet table. A slender hand gracefully reaches out toward the mysterious cluster of dark, unknown fruit. Her heart pounding with curiosity, Sophia observes that the fruit is black but wonders if it actually tastes good enough to eat. Deciding to take a bold risk, she cheerfully declares that there is absolutely no harm in trying it. Chewing happily, Sophia's face instantly bursts into a bright smile as she joyfully proclaims that the mysterious fruit is absolutely delicious. Experiencing this small joy reaffirms her deep inner desire, making her realize that she still desperately wants to see more of the world, to leave the tower, and to finally be free, just before she hears someone call her sister. Her profound thoughts are suddenly interrupted by a cheerful voice, causing her to turn and excuse herself, while the newcomer compliments her beautiful clothes. Ilias, shining with princely charm, warmly assures Sophia that the garments suit her perfectly as she happily calls out his name. A bright, joyful smile spreads across Ilias's face as he happily greets his sister in the middle of the crowded hall. Handing her a plate full of the dark fruit, Ilias excitedly urges her to eat them all, explaining that he brought the grapes just for her and asking if she likes them. Observing her kind-hearted little brother, Ilias, Sophia affectionately notes that the black color of the fruit actually has a subtle hint of purple in it. Wondering if they can grow the fruit back home, Sophia reflects that Ilias is the only person who treats the despised Kingslayer like an ordinary human being. Reflecting on her desire to never become an obstacle to Ilias's future ascension, Sophia is suddenly interrupted as her little brother calls out to her. Turning toward the boy in confusion, she realizes with mounting urgency that she must escape this palace as soon as possible. Flashing a warm, gentle smile to cover her panic, Sophia praises Ilias for always being such a wonderful child and kind brother. Suddenly snapping a branch in his hand, Ilias bluntly rejects her praise and leaves Sophia completely stunned. With a chilling sincerity, the young prince declares that absolutely everything he does is solely for his own benefit. Immediately masking his coldness, Ilias laments how rarely they get this chance and wonders aloud when he will ever see his sister again. Touched by his apparent sweetness, Sophia assures him that just meeting him brings her happiness, prompting Ilias to wish he could freely visit her tower. Clenching her fists, Sophia resolves to never let the kind boy discover the daily humiliation she suffers at his mother's hands. Steeling her determination, the young princess vows to give her current situation absolutely everything she has. Beaming brightly, she promises herself that she will make her dream a reality and step out into the free world, no matter how impossible it currently seems. Her heart swells with hope as she dedicates this newfound, fierce resolve to both herself and her beloved little brother. As the royal siblings walk together through the grand hall, their contrasting demeanors perfectly mask the heavy secrets they both harbor. Breaking the silence, Ilias playfully directs his sister's attention toward the massive, imposing throne. Sitting effortlessly upon the seat of power is King Leonard Vallo, the highly esteemed ruler of the neighboring country. Sophia gazes at the foreign monarch in total awe, entirely captivated by his piercing and unusually rare red eyes. The intimidating king suddenly scowls, clicking his tongue in apparent irritation at an unseen nuisance. His intense, shadowy gaze sweeps across the bustling room, radiating an overwhelming aura of danger. Blushing furiously, Sophia frantically wonders if she was staring too much and if the neighboring king is now glaring directly at her. Her panicked, racing thoughts are abruptly interrupted as Ilias calls out her name once more. Stepping uncomfortably close, Ilias wraps an arm around her and smoothly deduces that she is trying to leave the country strictly for his sake. Startled by his sudden, aggressive invasion of space, Sophia flinches and stares at him in complete bewilderment. Leaning in with an unsettlingly cold expression, Ilias whispers sharply that her departure is absolutely not what he wants. Holding her firmly in place, he ruthlessly tears down her hopes by pointing out her utter lack of means, plans, or allies to ever successfully escape the tower. Flashing a deceptively cheerful smile, the young prince happily mocks her deepest desires as entirely impossible. He casually dismisses her treasured dream as nothing more than a foolish, empty illusion lacking any real thought. Struck completely silent by his cruel words, Sophia averts her gaze in profound, crushing sorrow. Unable to bear the stifling atmosphere for a second longer, she excuses herself to step outside for some fresh air. Wandering down a quiet corridor, a heartbroken Sophia questions why Ilias would hide such hurtful thoughts from her for so long. Tears prick her eyes as she realizes she had been foolishly taking advantage of the very kindness that gave her those dreams in the first place. A vivid memory surfaces of her younger self marveling at the vast collection of books hidden away in her lonely tower. Those worn pages had introduced her to endless oceans and foreign sights, igniting a desperate yearning for the massive world outside. The sheer wonder she felt reading those fascinating stories had been her only beacon of hope in the dark. Snapping back to the harsh present, Sophia realizes with a jolt that she must return before the guards begin searching for her. As she hurries back, she overhears a hushed conversation about King Leonard and his incredibly troublesome demands. The unseen voices express deep suspicion over why a newly crowned king would so eagerly demand to meet the princess. Recognizing her stepmother's chilling voice, Sophia freezes in terror, terrified of the severe consequences if she is caught wandering alone. Peeking cautiously around the stone pillar, the princess strains her ears to uncover their dark secrets. She listens in absolute confusion as the conspirators discuss her upcoming 18th birthday and a highly suspicious man. Her blood runs entirely cold when her stepmother coldly declares that they have absolutely no choice but to kill her. Trembling uncontrollably in the shadows, Sophia struggles to process the horrifying reality that her own mother wants her dead. The sinister voices plot to eliminate her before she can receive a highly anticipated marriage proposal. The cruel woman insists they must think carefully about the catastrophic risks of letting her live. They fear that Sophia might use her future husband's military power to eventually launch a vengeful coup against their kingdom. Resolving to protect the throne at all costs, the conspirators firmly agree that such a rebellion can never be allowed to happen. Knowing her life is in immediate peril, Sophia desperately orders her body to escape before she is discovered. Before she can take a single step, a sharp voice shatters the silence and commands her to stop right there. Her cruel stepmother spots her in the corridor and viciously sneers at the wretched girl. As the malicious woman compares her to a rat in the dark, Sophia's mind screams at her to run for her life to avoid being killed. Despite her frantic survival instincts, paralyzing fear completely roots her legs to the cold stone floor. Approaching with a sadistic smile, her mother mocks her perfect timing, delighted that the doomed princess walked right into her own execution. A cloaked assassin and the wicked queen corner a terrified Sophia inside the grand, sunlit cathedral. Glaring down with pure malice, the cruel woman demands to know if Sophia grasps just how much her very existence terrifies the king. The spiteful mother rants about the daily humiliation she endures, furious that she must show fake respect to the daughter of the late queen. Touching her lip with a sinister smile, she coldly declares that none of it matters anymore because everything ends today. Her eyes gleaming with sadistic joy, the wicked queen softly admits that absolutely nothing makes her happier than this long-awaited moment. Startled by the sudden hostility, Sophia stumbles backwards onto the cold stone floor in complete shock. The merciless woman cruelly sneers that no one will ever miss the wretched princess before finally ordering the assassin to strike. Trembling in absolute terror, Sophia stares up at the approaching killer and desperately cries out that she does not want to die. Losing all remaining patience, the wicked queen screams at the cloaked man to execute the girl immediately. Staring wide-eyed at the looming blade, the helpless princess braces herself for the agonizing end. Paralyzed by overwhelming fear, Sophia closes her eyes and silently accepts that her tragic life is finally over. In a sudden flash of violent movement, a massive blade brutally slashes through the air and completely severs the assassin's head. Warm blood furiously splatters across Sophia's pale face, leaving her utterly stunned and confused by the shocking intervention. A deep, imposing voice echoes through the blood-stained hall, casually noting that he had been searching everywhere for the missing princess. The terrified queen stammers in absolute disbelief, fearfully demanding to know what the sudden intruder intends to do. Stepping out of the shadows, a blood-drenched King Leonard Volo glares down at the trembling woman as she recognizes his terrifying presence. Fixing the wicked woman with a deadly stare, the imposing monarch sharply warns the foreign queen to watch her words. Shifting his piercing gaze entirely away from the cowardly mother, Leonard coldly states that he is not here for her. Flashing a remarkably gentle smile through the fresh blood, the foreign king proudly announces that he has come to take Sophia away. Stepping closer with his sword drawn, Leonard repeats his solemn vow to claim the bewildered princess as his own. Gazing softly down at the stunned girl, the intimidating monarch admits that the road to reach this fateful moment has been incredibly long. Sophia flinches in complete bewilderment as the fearsome king softly calls out her name. Dropping to one knee before the ruined girl, Leonard gently takes her trembling hand and sincerely apologizes for his delay. Looking directly into her wide eyes, the powerful ruler asks if she will accept his sudden proposal to become his wife. Enraged by the shocking turn of events, the wicked queen violently protests that she will never allow such an absurd union to happen. Instantly shifting his demeanor, the fierce king turns a lethal, chilling glare toward the screeching woman. In the blink of an eye, Leonard thrusts the blood-stained tip of his massive sword directly against the queen's trembling throat. Ordering her absolute silence, he threatens to spread the damning rumor that the foreign queen shamelessly attempted to assassinate her own kingdom's princess. Pressing the sharp steel closer to her delicate skin, the intimidating ruler relishes the pathetic gasp escaping the trapped woman's lips. Desperately clinging to her shattered pride, the terrified queen demands to know if he truly believes he can get away with threatening royalty. Scoffing at her empty bravado, Leonard mocks the pathetic woman for failing to say anything of actual value to save her life. The ruthless king confidently warns that he possesses countless methods to ruin her completely, guaranteeing that she alone will regret crossing him. Dismissing the pathetic mother as completely irrelevant, the triumphant monarch turns his back and gently urges Sophia to leave with him. Following him in a complete daze, the heartbroken princess struggles to process the horrifying reality that her own mother genuinely tried to murder her. Trailing behind her sudden savior, Sophia frantically wonders what to do next while desperately trying to decipher the mysterious king's true intentions. Abruptly stopping in his tracks, the massive king quietly apologizes for the horrifying ordeal she just endured. Wiping the fresh blood from his face, Leonard awkwardly attempts to explain his incredibly violent entrance. He gently admits that brutally beheading an assassin right in front of her must have been an incredibly disturbing sight to witness. Snapping out of her daze, Sophia immediately interrupts his apology with a sudden burst of realization. Clutching her chest tightly, the earnest princess firmly declares that the cloaked man would have undoubtedly ended her life if Leonard hadn't intervened. Gazing up at him with profound gratitude, Sophia sincerely thanks the blood-stained monarch for graciously saving her life. Flashing a warmly innocent smile, Leonard dismisses her thanks by stating that her absolute safety is the only thing that truly matters. Wasting absolutely no time, the eager king proposes that they mount a horse immediately and ride fast enough to reach his country by dawn. Misinterpreting her sudden shock, Leonard casually asks if the princess is simply having trouble figuring out how to ride a horse. Panicking internally, Sophia rationalizes that despite him being her brave savior, moving to a foreign country so suddenly is incredibly overwhelming. Frantically realizing she cannot bluntly reject the king's offer, the flustered girl struggles to find an appropriate excuse to delay the departure. Leaning in with an intensely serious expression, the dark-haired ruler firmly demands to know what is truly bothering her. Feeling completely cornered by his piercing red eyes, the terrified princess freezes in absolute panic under his overwhelming pressure. Stuttering nervously, Sophia desperately begs for permission to briefly return to her lonely tower room for just a single moment. Reluctantly agreeing to her hesitant request, Leonard grants her the brief detour while warning her to stay incredibly vigilant against her wicked mother. Knowing they lack time before she sends more assassins, the duo prepares to move quickly. Leonard respectfully commands Her Majesty to wait outside for a brief moment. Shocked by the sudden request, Sophia protests that it is completely impossible for her to simply stay behind. Acknowledging his inappropriate request, he explains the room is entirely unfit for her and might even contain bugs. Insisting she must go in to protect him from potential assassins, she boldly declares that a few bugs do not matter to her. Opening the heavy door, she finally reveals that this ruined, desolate space is actually her own room. Stepping inside the chamber, Leonard admits he expected the royal accommodations to be modest at best. He stares in utter disbelief, entirely unable to comprehend how a princess's room could be left in such a deplorable state. Admitting her profound shame, Sophia confesses she honestly never wanted anyone to see this shocking reality. She explains how she desperately hid her true self and pretended everything was fine just to avoid being seen as an oppressed girl. Overwhelmed with heavy guilt, she apologizes to His Majesty for bringing him to such a dreadful place. Bowing her head, she offers a sincere apology while expressing deep, painful shame over her living conditions. Gesturing to a simple, worn chair, she humbly offers him the absolute only seat available in the barren room. Reaching out to gently tilt her face upward, Leonard firmly questions why she feels the need to apologize. Looking deeply into her tearful eyes, he confidently reassures Sophia that this terrible situation is absolutely not her fault. He angrily shifts all the blame to her wicked stepmother and the corrupt palace staff who willfully turn a blind eye. Promising to make them pay the price they deserve, he darkly vows to take their lives if she wishes it. Stunned by his intense declaration to do anything for her happiness, she questions why he would go to such lengths for her. Tears welling in her eyes, she asks why he is treating her with such profound and unexpected kindness. Gazing at him in awe, she softly reminds him that they only just met today. He pauses silently, looking intently at her as he carefully contemplates her heavy question. Before he can fully explain his heartfelt reasoning, he simply begins to speak. Sensing approaching danger, he suddenly scoops her into his arms and declares they will talk later because enemies are coming. Holding her tight against his chest, he strictly orders her to be quiet so she does not bite her tongue. Panicking as he prepares to leap, she desperately asks what he means when he suddenly announces they are going to jump. Telling her to relax, he effortlessly aims to jump onto a nearby tree to escape their deadly pursuers. Clinging to him in sheer terror, she cries out that the massive distance is far too great. The baffled assassins arrive at the empty scene, thoroughly confused about where their targets disappeared to. Heavy footsteps echo below as the guards scramble wildly through the dense brush in a futile search. Hiding safely in the shadowy canopy, Sophia whispers nervously to ask if the threat has really left. Breathing heavily from the sudden exertion, Leonard immediately turns to check if Sophia is all right. Trembling slightly in his arms, she meekly confirms that she is perfectly fine. Noticing a sudden, bizarre change in his rigid demeanor, she watches as he struggles to hold back his amusement. Bursting into genuine, loud laughter, he apologizes but admits her terrified expression was absolutely hilarious. Sophia stares at him in wide-eyed wonder, completely captivated by the glowing warmth of his sudden smile. Brushing off his own laughter, he notices her dazed state and curiously asks why she looks so lost in thought. Reminding her that he is human before anything else, he explains that it is perfectly okay to laugh when something is funny. Getting immediately back to business, he urges that they have no time to waste and must hurry to the horses he prepared at the western gate. A sudden enemy voice chillingly interrupts their escape, mockingly asking to discuss something with His Majesty before they leave. Reacting with explosive, lightning speed, Leonard violently draws his blade to intercept the unavoidable ambush. He fiercely roars Sophia's name to warn her as the deadly assault erupts. With a sharp, aggressive grunt, he flawlessly deflects the blinding flurry of strikes from the hidden assailant. Launching a devastating counterattack, he delivers a bone-crushing kick that launches the enemy completely backward. The defeated assassin groans in agonizing pain as he crashes incredibly hard into the forest dirt. Standing tall over his crippled foe, Leonard smartly deduces that these men belong to her wicked stepmother. Silencing the man's desperate apologies, Leonard coldly declares that he has no choice but to die to prevent reinforcements. Condemning the man's blatant hypocrisy, he points out that the assassin was fully prepared to murder Sophia just moments ago. Raising his heavy sword for the final execution, Leonard brutally refuses to listen to any more pathetic pleas. Desperately screaming his name, Sophia lunges forward to stop His Majesty from landing the killing blow. Gripping his arm firmly, she spares the defeated assassin by forcefully insisting that there is absolutely no need to take a life. Reluctantly yielding to Sophia's plea, Leonard lowers his weapon and quietly states that he understands. He agrees to step back if that is truly what she wants but insists on binding the assassin so he cannot move. Pulling the ropes tight around the man's wrists, the assassin violently mocks their mercy as sheer naivety. The defeated soldier laughs maniacally on the ground, declaring that surviving is the absolute only thing that actually matters to him. Spitting venom at Sophia, the assassin screams that the queen was right to target her because she is nothing but a cursed omen. Sophia lowers her head in devastating sorrow as the man ruthlessly insists that she must die for the sake of the people. Choking on his own blind hatred, the bound assassin cruelly proclaims that her tragic death would be a blessing for everyone. A sudden, sickening sound interrupts the vile rant, causing Sophia's eyes to widen in sheer, paralyzed horror. Stepping firmly down, Leonard violently silences the man's incessant babbling and coldly calls him an annoying chatterbox. Glaring down with deadly intent, His Majesty dangerously asks if he needs to cut out the assassin's tongue to finally buy them some peace. Crushing the man under his heavy boot, Leonard furiously reminds him that Sophia graciously chose to spare his worthless life. Flashing a terrifying, bloodthirsty grin, Leonard grips the man by the hair and whispers that his only regret is not being able to kill him. He intensely promises to make the miserable scum painfully realize that even a life as pathetic as his still holds value. Watching the sharp blade glint menacingly, Sophia wonders why her racing heart is fluttering instead of freezing in terror. She realizes she should be trembling in absolute fear at the overwhelming brutal violence radiating from him. Looming fiercely over the defeated enemy, Leonard's dark, intimidating presence completely dominates the shadowed forest. Staring at his brutal methods, she confesses internally that she should see him as a ruthless, unforgiving monster. Hearing him passionately declare that all this extreme brutality is solely for her sake, her conflicted heart begins to waver. Her breath catches sharply in her throat as a profound, life-altering realization suddenly washes over her. Snapping out of her daze, she softly calls out his name as he turns back and gently tells her not to worry. Smiling warmly through the splattered blood, he vows to erase anyone who harms her, leaving Sophia marveling at how safe she feels. Reaching out to gently intertwine their bloody fingers, he passionately confesses that he has been searching for her all this time. Gripping her hand tightly, he intensely declares that she is his alone from this moment forward and forever. His deeply possessive words echo heavily in the silent air as he firmly insists that she was always meant to be his. A soft, breathless gasp escapes her lips as the sheer, undeniable weight of his unwavering devotion finally sinks in. Struggling to process her overwhelming emotions, she stammers weakly while trying to remind herself that she is the master of her own fate. Her large eyes tremble with deep uncertainty as she looks up at the towering, blood-stained king standing protectively before her. Gently cupping her tear-streaked face with his dark gloves, Leonard softly repeats his reassuring promise not to worry. Looking deeply into her soul, he vows that his heart, his body, and everything he owns now belong entirely to her. Shifting his focus back to their urgent escape, he declares that they must quickly leave this cursed palace and return to his homeland. Glancing toward the towering castle architecture, he notes that his loyal soldiers were supposed to have their escape route ready by now. Staring at the massive, empty iron gates, he casually remarks that their reinforcements surprisingly have not arrived yet. Standing nervously by his formidable side, Sophia softly agrees and hopes their armed escort will appear momentarily. Completely unfazed by the sudden delay, Leonard calmly decides they will simply wait by the grand gates for a little while. Staring at his blood-soaked clothes, Sophia internally agonizes over why he chose her, terrified he does not know about her deadly prophecy. Despite the looming shadow of her dark curse, she reflects on how this fierce man has already saved her time and time again. His profound, romantic declaration of claiming her forever continues to echo warmly in her heavily conflicted heart. Clenching her trembling fists, she resolves that she must confess her dark secret to him to avoid betraying his absolute trust. Gathering every ounce of her remaining courage, she nervously calls out to His Majesty in the quiet, moonlit courtyard. Standing solemnly before him, she drops a devastating truth, bravely warning him that her very existence is a direct danger to his life. With a heavy, aching heart, she finally reveals her terrifying burden by confessing that she bears the cursed prophecy of the King's Slayer. She desperately warns that even as a powerful foreign king, he might not be safe from her fatal curse, to which he calmly agrees. To her absolute shock, he reveals he is already fully aware of the curse, instantly shattering her painful assumption that he would abandon her. Smiling flawlessly, he declares he would happily die for her without a single regret, leaving her completely and utterly stunned. Bewildered, she stammers to ask how he uncovered a deeply guarded palace secret and why he would go to such extreme lengths. Brushing a finger against his lip, he smoothly brags that uncovering secrets is effortless with the vast intelligence network of his kingdom. Pausing his confident stride, his expression suddenly softens as he gently admits there is still a mystery he cannot solve alone. Taking her small hands in his, he lovingly confesses that dark, grim prophecies were never what he truly wanted to learn about her. Leaning in closer, he eagerly asks to know the simple, beautiful things about her, like what brings her peace and what foods she loves. Gazing at her with breathtaking tenderness, Leonard whispers that the absolute only thing he wants in this world is to truly know her. Pulling her into a sudden, fiercely protective embrace, Leonard firmly reassures a trembling Sophia not to worry about the dark, looming shadows of the terrible prophecy. Gazing down at her with burning intensity, he boldly declares that he absolutely refuses to die because of some foolish, unfounded curse. Overwhelmed by his unwavering and reckless resolve, large, heavy tears immediately begin to well up in Sophia's wide, disbelieving eyes. She hesitates for a brief, agonizing moment, desperately struggling to accept his dangerous devotion despite her deep-rooted fears. Gripping his ruined clothes, she desperately insists that His Majesty does not need to bear such a massive, fatal burden solely for her sake. Staring down with raw, unfiltered emotion, Leonard softly asks how he can possibly convey the true, overwhelming depths of his feelings to her. Wrapping his strong arms fiercely around her waist under the moonlit sky, he passionately confesses that he has loved her from afar for a very long time. His intense, lingering gaze darkens dangerously as a deeply possessive, primal shadow completely overtakes his handsome features. Leaning in closer to her ear, he vows with terrifying, unyielding certainty that he will absolutely never let her go. Staring at her with manic, unbreakable devotion, he chillingly proclaims that rejecting him or fleeing to the ends of the earth will not change a single thing. He dangerously invites her to run if she truly wishes, but darkly warns that his obsessed heart is simply not vast enough to ever accept her escape. Closing the distance between them with a predatory glint, he threateningly whispers that he might just end up locking her away forever. Pushed aggressively against the cold carriage wall, Sophia gasps in sudden, breathless fear as he traps her completely in his imposing shadow. Trembling under his overwhelming, dominant presence, she desperately cries out that she is a living person and not just a mere object to be possessed. Realizing his terrifying mistake as her fear spikes, Leonard instantly pulls back in sheer panic and violently apologizes for his monstrous behavior. Dropping his head in heavy, agonizing shame, he tells her she can despise him while frantically swearing he never wanted to hurt or objectify her. Confessing his profound guilt with a trembling voice, he admits that he acted in the absolute worst way possible and never actually intended to imprison her. Shrinking away like a completely defeated, broken child, the once powerful king harshly calls himself a truly miserable, pathetic man. Surprised by his sudden, drastic change in demeanor, Sophia covers her mouth and bursts into genuine, bell-like laughter at his surprisingly pathetic expression. Catching her breath, she gently admits he was truly frightening and begs him not to repeat it, prompting him to nervously ask if she now despises him. Rubbing the back of his neck in absolute wonder, Leonard reveals a strange, blossoming happiness because no one has ever been completely honest and accepted him as he is. The heavy, suffocating tension finally shatters entirely, leaving the two of them smiling warmly at each other in the quiet, recovering night. Eager to shift the mood to something brighter, Leonard cheerfully suggests they talk about his kingdom so she can finally learn more about her new home. Sophia's large eyes instantly light up with brilliant, infectious excitement as she eagerly accepts his wonderful, unexpected proposal. Amused by her sparkling, boundless enthusiasm, he leans in curiously and playfully asks if she is truly that interested in his foreign land. Beaming with bright, uncontainable joy, she proudly declares that her ultimate, lifelong passion is to travel and freely explore the entire world. Flustered by her bold, sweeping confession, she quickly clarifies with a bright smile that she is still incredibly interested in his kingdom and reign. Laughing freely and loudly, Leonard boldly calls her his wife and deeply praises her charming, endless curiosity about the vast world. Their tender, intimate moment is abruptly shattered when a desperate, urgent voice suddenly calls out for his sister from the grand palace gates. Ilias finally arrives breathless at the scene, gasping in utter, overwhelming relief that he managed to find Sophia safe and sound. Bending over to desperately catch his ragged breath, the exhausted brother immediately dismisses any worry about his own terrible, weakened condition. Sweating heavily, Ilias looks at Sophia with deep, tragic sorrow and passionately begs her to pull herself together and listen carefully to his next words. Pausing heavily as the dreaded weight of the moment sets in, he chokes on the devastating news before finally uttering the word about their father. With a completely shattered, grieving expression, Ilias delivers the crushing blow that their father, the king, has officially left this world. Staggering backward as her entire reality crumbles, Sophia whispers that the sudden, catastrophic death is absolutely impossible to believe. Leonard immediately lunges forward with lightning reflexes to catch her violently trembling body before she collapses onto the cold stone floor. Drowning in devastating, suffocating despair, she desperately blames herself, convinced this tragedy struck merely because she selfishly dreamed of escaping. Paralyzed by the crushing, inevitable guilt of the Kingslayer prophecy, she stares into the hollow void and claims all the blame for the royal murder. Leonard forcefully interrupts her rapidly spiraling panic, fiercely declaring that her dark guilt and self-blame are absolutely not true. Flashing a cold, fiercely protective scowl, Ilias suddenly orders the foreign king to immediately release his sister's trembling hand. Ilias urgently warns Leonard that fleeing back to his homeland right after the king's assassination will ignite massive, dangerous political suspicions. Staring intensely at the blood-soaked king, Ilias formally and coldly insists that His Majesty should retreat to his royal chamber immediately to avoid scandal. The brother firmly presses the tense issue, arguing that stepping away is the absolute best and safest thing for Sophia's precarious sake right now. Masking her shattered, bleeding heart, Sophia quietly apologizes for losing control and bravely steps out of Leonard's warm, protective embrace. Reluctantly yielding to the grim, undeniable political reality, Leonard states that he fully understands and will strictly comply with the harsh request. Ilias arrogantly tells Leonard not to worry about Sophia and boldly mocks him by suggesting he finally change out of his terrifying, blood-stained clothes. Smiling with a dangerous, hidden edge, Ilias smoothly prepares to escort his deeply traumatized sister back into the dangerous viper's nest of the palace. Turning his back entirely on the imposing foreign king, Ilias sharply commands his sister to follow him away from the tense courtyard scene. The heavy, oppressive silence of the grand palace halls instantly swallows the siblings as they march solemnly back toward the dark center of power. Watching them leave with a burning intensity, Leonard narrows his furious eyes, deeply suspicious about the incredibly convenient timing of the king's sudden death. Pondering the sudden assassination, Leonard remains completely certain that Sophia could never be responsible for such a brutal crime. Gripping the heavy iron handle, someone firmly pulls the grand wooden door open to reveal the hidden scene inside. Leonard bursts through the doorway, his dark eyes widening in absolute shock at the unexpected sight before him. Inside the lavish room, elegantly poured tea sits on the table as Ilias calmly asks if his sister has finally settled down. Sitting stiffly beside her grinning brother on the luxurious sofa, Sophia quietly confirms she feels slightly better. With a solemn and heavy expression, Sophia gathers her fragile courage and directly demands to know exactly how their father died. Ilias pauses in heavy silence, his composed demeanor shifting as his sister's dangerous question hangs thickly in the air. He smoothly replies that the exact cause of death remains unknown while reassuring her that she is absolutely not to blame. Stirring his tea with a silver spoon, he calmly notes that a much more surprising detail has aggressively caught his attention. Glancing back over her shoulder in mild shock, Sophia listens as he questions why she is receiving the news of their father's death so coldly. Pressing the tense issue, he points out the urgent rumor that she is already preparing to flee to the neighboring kingdom. Flashing a brilliant and unsettling smile, Ilias suddenly offers his most heartfelt congratulations to his bewildered sister. Utterly confused by his bizarre reaction, Sophia stares blankly as he happily declares that her lifelong dream has finally come true. Her wide eyes tremble with sheer disbelief as the deeply unsettling weight of his joyful words slowly sinks into her mind. Clutching her elegant dress nervously, she stammers out a hesitant thank you while shrinking under his intense gaze. Ilias throws his head back and erupts into loud, unhinged laughter that aggressively shatters the quiet room. Still chuckling in absolute disbelief, he admits he thought King Leonard's sudden marriage proposal was a joke until he saw her ready to comply. His smile fading into a chilling smirk, he questions if she truly believes she can simply become a queen and live happily ever after. Mocking her desperate hopes, he cruelly calls her naive and unfortunate for thinking the traumatic past can be so easily erased. Sophia desperately stammers that she has not fully agreed to become queen yet, prompting Ilias to instantly dismiss her frantic defense. Closing the distance with a dark presence, he firmly insists that nothing will ever change and accuses her of planning to leave him behind. Sophia hesitates deeply under his intense and overwhelming gaze, struggling to find the right words to counter his heavy accusation. Ilias closes his eyes in profound, dramatic sorrow, masterfully painting himself as the tragic victim of her supposed abandonment. Opening his eyes with a haunting sadness, he deeply asks why his sister constantly chooses to shut him out in her times of need. He bitterly complains that she never shares anything with him whenever truly important and life-altering events occur. Listing her hidden secrets, he angrily reminds her that she kept King Leonard's proposal and the castle's cruelty completely concealed from him. Reaching out with a hauntingly gentle motion, he softly traces the delicate skin of her fragile arm. Staring deeply into her fearful eyes, he passionately confesses that his absolute only desire has always been to live happily by her side. A sudden and terrifying realization flashes across Sophia's face as she nervously stammers her brother's name in trembling dread. Standing tall with a chillingly bright smile, Ilias dismisses all her past suffering and casually declares that everything is perfectly fine now. Closing his eyes in serene satisfaction, he chillingly reveals his dangerous new philosophy that anyone who stands in their way must simply be removed. Projecting absolute and unhinged confidence, he firmly orders his terrified sister to leave every single violent problem in his capable hands. Leaning aggressively close, he falsely assumes that King Leonard must be forcefully threatening her into this sudden marriage. Flashing a murderous and psychotic glare, Ilias firmly vows to execute the powerful foreign king just to secure her freedom. Turning toward the grand window, he casually adds that he has already dealt with their wicked stepmother to guarantee Sophia's total liberation. A horrific wave of dread violently washes over Sophia as she mentally berates herself for being such a blind, miserable fool. Casually sweeping his hand through the air, Ilias promises to personally eradicate anyone who dares to block their path to happiness. He passionately begs her to live happily in an isolated, perfect world meant strictly for just the two of them. Sophia collapses emotionally in crushing despair, remembering how books were her only true escape while trapped in her lonely tower. Staring hollowly ahead, she tragically recalls that the brutal end of every story always left her drowning in absolute, suffocating solitude. The crushing weight of her isolated past shatters as she remembers that Ilias was the only light who ever visited her dark prison. Begging with terrifying and obsessive devotion, Ilias passionately declares that they must be happy together as loving half-siblings forever. A broken and breathless gasp escapes Sophia's lips as the horrifying reality of her brother's manic obsession completely paralyzes her. Trapped entirely by his looming presence, she desperately stutters to ask what terrifying things he is talking about. Ilias confidently steps closer, his heavy shoes thudding ominously against the polished wooden floor as he corners her. Standing firmly before the massive bookshelf, he angrily demands to know if she sees how incredibly unfair her tragic life has been. Running his fingers over an ancient tome, he furiously curses the foolish Kingslayer prophecy that ruined her entire existence. Trembling violently in his suffocating shadow, Sophia is left completely speechless by his sudden, explosive rage over her fate. Turning his head slightly, a terrifyingly dark and murderous shadow completely overtakes his previously gentle features. Glaring with absolute, unrestrained hatred, Ilias coldly vows that he will never forgive those who forced her to suffer. Filled with intense, venomous loathing, a richly dressed young Ilias fiercely declares his overarching hatred, agonizing over his past powerlessness. Trembling with profound, silent grief, he laments his crushing inability to do anything to protect his mother or the countless people suffering within the palace. Gripping an ornate book with newly forged, resolute determination, he vows that his pathetic cycle of helpless suffering officially ends today. A sudden, sharp clatter boldly shatters the heavy, oppressive silence as someone steps forward decisively on the polished wooden floor. Riding in an elegant carriage toward a grand palace, young Ilias nervously asks if his regal attire suits him before being told he is now a royal family member. A stern, commanding woman, gazing down with piercing, emotionless intensity, coldly addresses the incredibly anxious young boy by his name. A wide-eyed Ilias obediently agrees with his formidable mother's strict demand to act perfectly in accordance with his newly elevated, prestigious royal status. Whispering gossips cruelly observe the boy from the ornate shadows, murmuring dark rumors that his terrifying mother murdered a concubine just to become queen. A trio of gossiping maids continues their highly judgmental whispers, noting with subtle apprehension that young Ilias looks exactly like his royal majesty. Staring blankly ahead with eerily hollow eyes, the young boy is intensely scrutinized by the sprawling staff who boldly call him a living reflection of the king. The heavily judgmental maids suddenly flinch in startled, panicked surprise as they realize their cruel, hushed whispers might have been overheard. Young Ilias casts a chilling, dead-eyed glare over his shoulder toward the terrified servants, his stoic expression entirely devoid of any natural youthful warmth. Crushed entirely beneath the suffocating weight of his hostile environment, the isolated boy internally agonizes over what he could have possibly done to deserve this. Overwhelmed by his relentlessly oppressive reality, a tearful, older Ilias quietly reflects on the incredibly deep, unhealing scars left by his highly traumatic childhood. Desperately seeking a physical escape from the towering palace walls, he walks alone through the sprawling grounds, yearning only for complete, undisturbed isolation. Pushing his way vigorously through a dense, sunlit thicket of rustling foliage, he spots a beautifully secluded stone structure hidden deep within the royal gardens. Gazing upward in curious, hesitant wonder, he focuses his total attention on a solitary, magnificently weathered tower standing quietly in the distance. Hoping to finally find the peaceful, healing solitude he so desperately craves, young Ilias cautiously approaches the mysterious, ancient stone structure. He slowly ascends a steep, shadowy flight of ancient stone stairs, the heavy, undisturbed silence dramatically amplifying his highly tentative footsteps. Standing completely puzzled before a heavy door, the boy wonders aloud about the true purpose of this surprisingly well-kept tower hidden inside the palace. His exhausted eyes suddenly widen in pure, unadulterated shock as he notices something completely unexpected illuminating his darkened, lonely path. Staring intently at a pair of imposing wooden doors, Ilias is entirely captivated by a brilliant, mysterious light pouring brightly from the narrow gap between them. Pushing the heavy, creaking doors slightly ajar, he timidly calls out into the intensely illuminated room, cautiously asking if anyone is hiding inside. Bathed fully in ethereal, golden sunlight, a beautiful, wide-eyed young girl clutching an ornate book casually turns to face the unexpected royal intruder. Ilias freezes completely in his tracks, his breath catching painfully in his throat as he stares in awestruck silence at the captivating girl standing before him. Blinking in genuine, innocent surprise, the girl nervously questions the young boy's identity, curiously asking if he works for the sprawling palace outside. Quickly recovering from his initial, paralyzing shock, Ilias bluntly asks the strange girl if she has simply lost her way within the massive royal estate. As the heavy wooden door thuds shut, Ilias suddenly realizes with dawning horror that this hidden girl must be the imprisoned princess mentioned in the prophecy. Startled by the sudden echoing noise, the girl jumps slightly, but Ilias quickly steps forward, reassuring her not to worry about his unexpected presence. Blushing deeply with innocent, unbridled delight, the lonely princess confesses that she feels inexplicably happy simply because she has never had a visitor before. Taken utterly aback by her boundless optimism, an incredulous Ilias halts her joyous rambling to forcefully ask if she truly understands that she is being held captive. Glaring sharply at the makeshift barricades, he harshly questions whether she feels deeply ashamed to be a royal princess unjustly exiled to such a bleak prison. Meeting his unusually harsh words with a gentle, unwavering smile, the radiant girl calmly explains that her wrongful captivity is exactly why she refuses to despair. The two deeply contrasting children stand in quiet, heavy contemplation, the deafening silence vividly highlighting the profound emotional weight of their encounter. Throwing her arms wide open with joyful exuberance, she proudly declares that leaving her prison has become her ultimate dream, believing hope still exists. Stunned completely into silence by her blinding, resilient positivity, a bewildered Ilias can only mutter a quiet, thoroughly disbelieving question. Laughing brightly among her books, the princess inadvertently highlights Ilias's inner turmoil, making him realize he feels far more imprisoned than she ever will. Clutching his chest in agonizing emotional pain, the heartbroken boy tearfully confesses that he feels like he is slowly suffocating every single day of his life. Sensing his profound, absolutely crushing despair, the gentle girl leans in to offer a tender word of absolute reassurance, promising him that everything will be fine. Reaching out warmly to the shattered, trembling boy, she confidently vows to be there for him, beautifully assuring him that his days of loneliness are finally over. As she cheerfully promises to remain eternally by his side, an older Ilias internally reflects on how those incredibly simple words fundamentally altered his trajectory. Overwhelmed completely by an alien sense of comfort, the young boy admits that her heartfelt declaration meant absolutely everything to his deprived, lonely soul. Smiling incredibly warmly, The radiant princess completely saved his fractured soul by treating him like a real human being devoid of any sickening royal disgust. In extremely stark contrast to her radiant warmth, Ilias coldly remembers the rest of the palace inhabitants as nothing more than vile monsters hiding behind human faces. Smiling with genuine, innocent joy while holding one of her precious books, Ilias fondly remembers that his only moments of true happiness were inside that tower. The beautiful memory immediately shatters as an imposing shot of the grand castle introduces the furious voice of his mother, absolutely livid at his social transgression. Marching fiercely down a shadowed stone corridor, the terrifying queen strictly forbids a trailing Ilias from ever returning, coldly reminding him of his royal destiny. Trembling wildly with fearful, utter desperation, the small boy stammers out a weak, pitiful protest to his deeply intimidating mother, desperate to protect his joy. Completely unmoved by his tearful pleas, the cruel queen sadistically threatens to take matters into her own hands, stating she wouldn't mind punishing the girl. Staring down at her completely terrified son with absolute authority, she delivers a chilling ultimatum, warning him to stay far away to keep the princess safe. Showcasing opulent grandeur, the heavily ornamented royal hall stands eerily quiet beneath towering, intricately carved stone arches. Sipping his tea in deep contemplation, young Ilias realizes with mounting dread that waiting to become king will be far too late to save her. He softly sets his delicate teacup down, quietly agonizing over how a weak, defenseless girl could possibly assassinate a fully grown adult. Slamming his hands furiously upon the desk, the agitated boy angrily rejects the completely nonsensical logic of the terrifying royal rumors. Forced to rely entirely on his own wits while under his mother's watchful eye, he resolves to actively change their grim fate. Burying himself deep within the massive palace library, young Ilias intensely scours rare records to uncover the hidden truth behind the Kingslayer prophecy. Standing surrounded by towering stacks of ancient tomes, he finally pieces together the buried historical reality after years of exhaustive, relentless research. The heavy, yellowed pages of a weathered book rustle loudly in the silent room as he rapidly flips through the ancient, revealing text. His eyes blow wide open in absolute, paralyzing shock as he completely absorbs the world-shattering revelation printed on the aged parchment. Gripping the ancient book tightly, an older Ilias solemnly admits to a stunned audience that the absolute truth shocked him just as deeply. Listening with wide, apprehensive eyes, a beautifully dressed Sophia stands completely frozen as the heavy, dramatic revelations finally wash over her. Ilias boldly shatters the grand illusion by fiercely declaring that Sophia would have rightfully been revered as a holy saint if their foolish father had not interfered. Trembling slightly in utter confusion, the bewildered girl weakly stammers out a question, completely unable to process the idea of being a revered saint. Smiling with an incredibly tender, disarming warmth, Ilias gazes fondly at his beloved sister as he prepares to completely rewrite her tragic history. Approaching her gracefully, he explains firmly that she was never a disastrous enemy of the people, revealing that the Kingslayer title was never a curse. Leaning in with intense, unyielding conviction, he forcefully assures her that her supposed cursed existence was actually the exact opposite of misfortune. He reveals a legendary past where the prophesied individual actually received a divine power specifically meant to overthrow tyrannical rulers and liberate the nation. King Leonard violently interrupts the tender moment, angrily pointing out that the previous ruler selfishly twisted the sacred prophecy for his own corrupt interests. Glaring coldly, the imposing monarch ruthlessly states that a king's death meant national ruin and offered absolutely no guarantee of his own personal survival. Staring down with dripping, venomous disdain, Leonard cruelly insists that the imprisoned girl should be overwhelmingly grateful he even allowed her to live. Gesturing grandly with theatrical flair, Ilias gleefully announces that this incredibly selfish deception is exactly why no one ever anticipated the true ending. Flashing a chilling, manic grin, Ilias proudly confesses that he himself is the true Kingslayer, not his innocent sister. Gasping in absolute, mind-numbing horror, a terrified Sophia violently recoils as her beloved brother officially drops his horrific, bloody confession. Bursting frantically through the heavy wooden doors, a desperate King Leonard furiously orders Sophia to immediately get away from the smiling madman. Charging forward with explosive, blinding speed, the enraged king roars that Ilias is the exact monster who ruthlessly murdered her father. Maintaining his unerringly calm composure, Ilias effortlessly mocks the charging monarch for arriving slightly faster than he initially anticipated. Standing dominantly over the battered, seated prince, the panting king glares down with intense, murderous hatred radiating from his trembling form. Seething with barely contained rage, Leonard fiercely interrogates the bastard prince, demanding to know what right he possesses to stand anywhere near Sophia. When the furious king directly asks if he harbors a secret grudge against her, a remarkably calm Ilias immediately and flatly denies it. Glaring sharply from his elevated position, the thoroughly confused monarch forcefully demands to know the actual, twisted reason behind the young man's actions. A grim vision of a bloody guillotine flashes as Ilias explains that Sophia would inevitably be wrongfully executed the moment the king actually died. Placing a hand dramatically over his heart, Ilias mocks the king's sheer hypocrisy, laughing that Leonard must obviously be fully aware of that grim reality. Staring upward with haunting, empty eyes, the prince chillingly rationalizes that murdering his own father was absolutely essential for his immediate ascension to the throne. Smiling with terrifying, absolute serenity, he completely shatters any remaining illusions by boldly admitting he felt pure, unadulterated happiness upon killing his father. Closing his eyes in blissful, psychotic relief, he proudly declares that the brutal patricide finally allowed him to personally liberate his beloved sister. Furious at the twisted logic, Leonard screams at him to stop joking, fiercely questioning why Ilias suddenly married Sophia just to drag her into his kingdom. Looking down with a dark, defeated expression, Ilias quietly whispers that none of his actions matter anymore because everything is already completely over. Staring blankly ahead with an eerie, hollow calmness, the doomed prince chillingly predicts that this entire chaotic tragedy will reach its conclusion very soon. Flashing a warm, incredibly sinister smile, Ilias suddenly addresses his sister directly, casually asking if she actually enjoyed the taste of the tea he served her. Trembling with uncontrollable, violent rage, a disgusted Leonard furiously curses the smirking prince, finally realizing the true, horrific depth of his treachery. Grabbing the prince violently, the panicked king completely loses his temper, screaming at the top of his lungs to know exactly what was in the drink. Looking perfectly relaxed despite the king's crushing grip, Ilias merely opens his mouth to casually deliver his final, absolutely devastating blow. Holding the smirking prince hostage, a horrified Leonard urgently reveals to a trembling Sophia that she has just ingested a special, highly lethal poison with no cure. Drawing a deadly, gleaming dagger in a flash of motion, the enraged monarch prepares to instantly execute the treacherous prince for his unforgivable crimes. Staring intensely with cold, murderous intent, the dark-haired king readies his lethal strike, absolutely determined to violently sever the madman's life. Completely ignoring the deadly blade inches from his face, Ilias calmly locks eyes with the room, curiously asking why someone is actively trying to stop him. Turning his full, chilling attention back to the dying girl, the deeply unhinged prince softly speaks Sophia's name with a mixture of fondness and absolute madness. Smiling with a terrifying, breathtaking gentleness, Ilias gazes upon the chaotic scene with the serene satisfaction of a man whose gruesome master plan has perfectly succeeded. Sweating and panting heavily from the lethal poison, Sophia is mocked by Ilias, who warmly wonders if her desperate attempt to defend him stems from pure kindness or mere hypocrisy. Clutching her chest in agonizing realization, Sophia suddenly realizes the horrifying truth behind the supposedly harmless situation. A sudden wave of intense, paralyzing exhaustion completely overtakes her failing body. Panicked and helpless, the terrified girl realizes with dread that her limbs stubbornly refuse to move. Glancing over with dawning horror, a deeply concerned King Leonard desperately calls out her name. Catching her collapsing form, Leonard roars her name while a seated Ilias chillingly offers a calm, twisted apology. Maintaining his unnerving composure, Ilias coolly explains that he sealed his deadly resolve the exact moment she planned to leave for Canceran. Desperately cradling the fading girl, the frantic monarch begs Sophia not to speak while she weakly tries to utter her brother's name. Overwhelmed by sheer betrayal and confusion, she agonizingly questions why her beloved brother would do such a thing. Reaching out with a trembling, blood-stained hand, Ilias admits he knew the tragic truth from the very beginning. Coughing up dark blood, the doomed prince confesses he simply wanted to dream of a happy life with her, even though it was completely impossible. Covering his tearful eyes in bitter defeat, he mocks his own foolishness, acknowledging that she must absolutely hate him now. Smiling through his gruesome fate, Ilias tenderly reveals he just wanted her to genuinely look at him as a brother, even if it was built on lies. A heartbreaking vision of their innocent childhood flashes as he tearfully admits his deepest, most desperate wish was simply for her to stay. The heavy memory shifts to King Leonard's grand coronation, highlighting the joyous celebration of the neighboring kingdom's new ruler. Drifting deeper into his fading consciousness, Ilias tragically reflects that his long-awaited, desperate endgame has finally become a reality. King Leonard gazes down with profound sorrow, silently vowing to fulfill the sacred, unspoken promise they once made. Holding her completely motionless body, the devastated king begs her to hold on for just a few more agonizing moments. Crushed entirely beneath the suffocating weight of impending loss, Leonard stares blankly as his entire world completely shatters. A suffocating, utterly heavy silence dominates the room as the king violently struggles to process the absolute tragedy. The crushing, undeniable reality finally sets in as the beautiful girl ceases breathing entirely. Trembling with profound, silent grief, a heartbroken Leonard tearfully whispers a gentle apology to the lifeless princess. He tenderly confesses that her radiant presence was the absolute only reason he managed to survive his own dark trials. Tightening his firm, desperate grip, the resolute monarch chillingly declares that his ultimate devotion to her remains completely unchanged. Flashing a tragically warm smile, he sincerely thanks her for gifting him the vital strength to endure everything up to this exact moment. Drawing a lethal blade to his own neck, the fiercely loyal king prepares to instantly join his beloved in death. A surreal vision of the afterlife suddenly materializes, showing a ragged Leonard stepping forward to eagerly follow her into the void. A massive, blinding explosion of brilliant divine light aggressively shatters the dark, tragic scene, instantly interrupting his lethal strike. Staring completely bewildered at the overwhelming radiance, the stunned king freezes in pure, unadulterated shock. He urgently demands to know what mysterious, supernatural force is actively interfering with his grim decision. Standing perfectly alive and bathed in ethereal light, a highly determined Sophia glares sharply at the completely bewildered monarch. Leonard's eyes blow incredibly wide as he breathes her name, completely unable to process the miraculous, impossible resurrection standing before him. Reaching out aggressively, a fierce Sophia violently grabs the deeply stunned king, forcefully demanding answers. Furious at his suicidal actions, she harshly scolds him for treating his own precious life with such sickening disregard. Staring intensely with tear-filled eyes, she passionately reminds him that absolute nothingness awaits if he foolishly chooses death. Bowing her head in pure, emotional exhaustion, the deeply distressed girl tearfully begs him to finally listen to her desperate plea. Trembling wildly with intense emotion, she strictly forbids him from ever attempting such a horrifying, reckless act again. The fiercely scolded king stands absolutely speechless, thoroughly overwhelmed by the intense, burning passion radiating from the resurrected princess. Gently yielding to her desperate commands, a relieved Leonard sincerely promises that he will never repeat his grim mistake. Leaning in closely, he tenderly establishes his own ultimate condition, practically begging her to never leave him alone again. Pulling her fiercely into a deeply emotional embrace, the desperate king firmly demands that she vow to stay by his side forever. Returning his incredibly tight embrace, a tearful Sophia completely surrenders to his warmth and happily seals the sacred vow. Locked together in a powerful, healing hug, they permanently solidify their unbreakable promise to face the future together. The heartwarming scene sharply transitions back to reality as a recovering Ilias casually remarks that they should eliminate the unconscious enemy now. A highly defensive Leonard steps aggressively in front of Sophia, fiercely warning the supposedly dead prince to stop making cruel jokes. Coughing weakly from his previous wounds, a completely baffled Ilias calls out, struggling to comprehend how his sister is perfectly fine. Smiling with incredibly genuine, radiant joy, the fully healed Sophia cheerfully greets her deeply confused, villainous brother. Looking down with sheer, unwavering authority, Leonard coldly informs the seated prince that Sophia's miraculous powers just saved his treacherous life. The imposing king bluntly states that if her glowing divine mark hadn't activated, Ilias would undoubtedly be a corpse right now. Staring downward in quiet, stunned reflection, the completely defeated prince wonders aloud if this is the legendary, prophesied divine power. Accepting his absolute failure, a grim Ilias directly challenges the royal couple, asking if they plan to immediately hand him over to the knights for execution. Dismissing the situation with a cold demeanor, the character adamantly refuses to do such a thing while noting that the crucial evidence disappeared long ago. He confidently commands the room, declaring his unyielding intention to make him ascend the throne and officially become the ruling king. Emphasizing the immense gravity of the choice, he states this monumental ascent is a necessary atonement and exactly what Sophia deeply wanted. Reflecting on her incredibly selfless nature, he warmly notes that his sister is always prioritizing others and tirelessly trying to save everyone around her. With a sharp, penetrating gaze, the man knowingly acknowledges that his counterpart clearly understands the gravity of the unfolding situation well. Ilias grimly realizes the catastrophic stakes, understanding that if he doesn't take the mantle of king, the entire country will violently plunge into utter chaos. A devastating civil war between nobles and royalists would undoubtedly erupt, potentially escalating into a massive, bloody conflict with neighboring nations. Despite the looming threat of kingdom-wide destruction, the prince casually admits that saving the realm alone doesn't actually make him want to be king. Apathetic to the kingdom's ultimate fate, he bluntly confesses that without his beloved sister, the country and its people mean absolutely nothing to him. Flashing a darkly amused and manic smile, he gleefully leans into the twisted realization that his sister is his sole anchor in this world. Towering over Sophia with an intense stare, he admits he is an incredibly selfish person and offers to consider taking the throne only if she agrees to stay right there by his side. He fully accepts his fundamentally flawed nature, starkly acknowledging that he is merely a selfish child at his core and nothing more. Despite knowing the heavy political consequences, he intensely declares that keeping her tightly tethered to him is driven entirely by his own burning, selfish desires. Covering his face in absolute emotional torment, Ilias calls himself a total idiot but insists that clinging to his selfish desires is still far easier than finally letting his sister go. Refusing to be pushed away by his insecurity, she firmly tells him there's no need to test her like this because she will undoubtedly always reach out to him. Looking directly at him with unwavering affection, Sophia softly reassures him that she stays simply because he is her deeply beloved, dear brother. A small, remarkably genuine chuckle escapes his lips as her incredibly comforting words gently break through his hardened, selfish exterior. Shocked by her sudden devotion, he urgently asks if she is seriously giving up her precious dream just for him, to which she gently reminds him of her past promises. Sophia beams brilliantly as she declares her ultimate dream is to see the outside world, joyfully promising that she will always remain firmly on his side no matter what. Overwhelmed by her unyielding brightness, Ilias bows his head slightly in silent, emotional contemplation as her words wash over his conflicted heart. Closing his eyes in a fleeting moment of vulnerable reflection, he allows her deeply comforting presence to completely ground his fractured spirit. In a deeply tender moment of sheer vulnerability, he reaches up and tightly grips the ornate fabric of his royal uniform right over his racing heart. Turning his broad back to her, Ilias somberly declares that she cannot stay here because this stifling palace is absolutely not where her true happiness lies. Recalling their shared childhood reading together, she warmly smiles and confirms she understood everything, especially the vital fact that he never truly abandoned her. Stepping much closer to her towering brother, Sophia softly calls out Ilias's name, her voice overflowing with deep, unwavering affection. Their eyes lock in an intensely intimate gaze, silently communicating a lifetime of unbreakable familial bonds and profound mutual understanding. Yielding to the overwhelming emotion of the moment, Ilias gently pulls his precious sister into a deeply protective, warm, and loving embrace. Gently caressing her long hair as he finally prepares to let her go, he softly sets a single heartfelt condition in return for granting her absolute freedom. Smiling radiantly through his bittersweet acceptance, he asks her to visit him from time to time, promising he'll always be eagerly waiting for her eventual return. Sophia's eyes widen with pure, sparkling relief as she gazes lovingly up at him, her beautiful smile radiating complete and utter joy. Beaming with unrestrained happiness, she enthusiastically agrees to his sweet condition, while Ilias internally comes to a profound, heartwarming realization about their unbreakable bond. He solemnly acknowledges that he was just a terrified coward, finally understanding that it was never actually possible for his fiercely loyal sister to abandon him. Taking incredibly decisive action, a dark-haired man abruptly announces that they will swiftly depart at sunrise and promises to immediately arrange the carriage. Bubbling with irrepressible excitement, he internally celebrates that starting tomorrow morning, he will finally be completely united with his beloved Sophia. Sophia claps her hands in sheer delight, exclaiming to King Leonard that she is incredibly excited because she's always deeply wanted to visit the neighboring country. Gritting his teeth with barely contained jealousy, Leonard glares viciously as Ilias jokingly teases that he'll definitely come visit Sophia once things settle down. Furious at the mere thought of sharing her, Leonard violently snaps that Ilias will absolutely be permanently banned from ever stepping foot into his sovereign country. Completely unfazed by the hostile threat, Ilias waves his hand dismissively and smoothly promises he'll just sneak in one way or another, telling Sophia not to worry at all. Leonard glares with lethal intent, coldly warning Ilias that if he dares to sneak across the border, their next unfortunate meeting will definitely take place inside a miserable prison cell. Shifting the conversation away from their petty, jealous squabble, they seriously bring up the grave, unresolved matter concerning the treacherous queen. Ilias casually adjusts his immaculate uniform and confidently tells his companions not to worry about the scheming queen's remaining influence at all. He cunningly explains that since only a select few ever knew about the prophecy from the very beginning, the queen has now completely lost all her royal support. Stripped of her immense power, she is now reduced to nothing more than a desperate criminal officially accused of attempting to assassinate the princess and committing other heinous murders. The shocked queen fiercely gasps in absolute horror as heavily armored knights abruptly present her with an official, damning royal warrant. Smirking at his flawless political victory, Ilias correctly deduces that the fallen queen must already be securely locked away in the strict custody of the kingdom's knights by now. Lowering his head in a rare, stunning display of genuine respect, Ilias solemnly addresses the dark-haired King Leonard as his rightful majesty. Entrusting his absolute most precious treasure to his former rival, Ilias earnestly begs King Leonard to safely take care of his beloved sister. Relinquishing his own selfish grasp completely, Ilias admits he firmly believes Leonard is the absolute only one who can truly make Sophia's grandest dreams come true. With a loud, echoing clatter, the grand royal carriage rolls heavily away, carrying Sophia toward her bright, expansive new future in the neighboring lands. Sophia warmly expresses her immense gratitude to King Leonard, joyfully stating that it was entirely because of him that she was finally able to peacefully reconcile with Ilias. Dismissing her gratitude with a gentle demeanor, King Leonard insists that Sophia's decision to come is more than enough. Troubled by the lingering debt, Sophia internally wrestles with the fact that she simply cannot ignore everything he has done for her. Flashing back to a desperate and bloody battle, she vividly recalls that without His Majesty's heroic intervention, she would have certainly perished. Overwhelmed by his life-saving actions, she resolves that she must at least find a meaningful way to express her deep gratitude. Pondering her limited options, the princess briefly considers waiting until their arrival to properly ask him how she can repay her massive debt. Suddenly halting her train of thought, a shocking realization dramatically brings her internal plotting to a screeching halt. Panic sets in as she suddenly remembers she never seriously considered the massive implication of officially entering the kingdom as King Leonard's fiancée. Her eyes widen in absolute sheer terror as the overwhelming gravity of her impending royal arrangement fully crashes down upon her mind. Sweating profusely from nervousness, she formally and awkwardly begs him to accept her humble self while Leonard merely laughs off her intense anxiety. Reassuring her frayed nerves, he explains that her presence is merely as a personal guest to investigate the prophecy rather than as a ruling queen. Maintaining his comforting smile, Leonard firmly insists there is absolutely no need for her to carry any unnecessary burdens on this journey. Finding her flustered reactions completely adorable, he gently tells her not to worry as she politely thanks His Majesty for his unwavering kindness. Gazing at her with profound devotion, Leonard internally declares that he loves her exactly as she is and that her happiness is completely tied to his own. Harboring a fierce dedication, he silently vows that seeing her beautiful smile is the single thing he desires more than anything else in the world. Shifting to a brutal memory under the moonlight, a blood-soaked Leonard violently proves he is willing to do absolutely anything to protect that smile. Glaring up from the blood-stained ground, a wounded assailant desperately demands to know why the king is still trying to kill Sophia. Cloaked in menacing shadows, Leonard's terrifying silhouette towers over the fallen man as he aggressively demands an immediate answer. Shrinking back in sheer terror, the battered survivor lets out a pathetic shriek as the royal's overwhelming killing intent suffocates the forest. Desperately trying to justify the treason, the assassin screams that capturing the queen means nothing because the disastrous prophecy is completely real. Staring down at the slaughtered mercenaries, Leonard finally understands that their fanatical belief in the omen is why the princess must be eliminated immediately. Coughing up blood, The terrified man realizes Leonard survived the ambush and confirms without a doubt that he is the terrifying figure from the rumors. Gripping his blood-drenched blade with lethal intent, the dark-haired monarch scoffs at the mercenary's ridiculous words. A cold, apathetic expression washes over Leonard's bruised face as the heavy silence of the massacre settles around his unyielding stance. Looking down with absolute disgust, he coldly informs the dying man that he understands absolutely nothing about the true situation. Sealing the assassin's fate, Leonard mercilessly declares that anyone who poses even the slightest threat to Sophia has no place in this world. Back in the present, Leonard sits elegantly within the lavish carriage, masking his ruthless nature behind the sophisticated composure of a perfect king. Ignorant to the bloodshed committed in her name, Sophia beams with bright excitement as she gleefully expresses her desire to reach their destination quickly. Watching her pure innocence, Leonard's dark eyes narrow slightly as he internally pities his poor, beautiful Sophia. Stepping down from the royal carriage, he dangerously reflects on the fact that she has arrived completely unaware of the bloody truth. Gesturing for her to join him, Leonard silently and obsessively vows that he will never actually allow his beloved to be truly free.